Jimmy Dore's repulsive method of arguing. So let's see what they're talking about here.
Overall, I think pressure on politicians is good. If the important thing is that that it, from my perspective, that the good faith, like what is the agenda in pressuring the politicians? And at the end of the day,
YouTube views isn't sufficient.
Well, it's not just YouTube views. I mean, put that aside for a moment. Like, but there is that is a.
Let's go back and answer the question. Because like we always say, we can do this either way.
Sufficient.
Well, it's not just YouTube views.
Well, let me go back a little more.
From my perspective, that the good faith, like what is the agenda in pressuring the politicians? And at the end of the day,
YouTube views isn't sufficient.
Well,
what is the agenda in pressuring politicians? Like, what is your motive? Let's say we're talking about forced to vote. Let's say my motive is I want to make Nancy Pelosi look bad. Let's say that's the motive for forced to vote. Now, let's say a different person has a motive for forced to vote, which is some sort of political tactic, right? What's the difference? What's the difference? In the same way that the protester who called out AOC a coward, what's the difference who he supported? Does she support militarism or not? But let it play more, and then I'm going to get more into this point that I'm making here. So let's let it play a little bit more. I'm not going to tell you to what part, but I'm listening for a particular part here.
Well, it's not just YouTube views. I mean, but put that aside for a moment. Like, but there is always.
What I want to add here is let's say if it was YouTube views. Let's say he's doing this tactic of YouTube views. Could a tactic where you're trying to get YouTube views, could they also work politically? What I'm saying, are they mutually, do they have to be excluded? What if that was the reason why Jimmy was doing it, for clicks? But isn't the strategy good? The strategy is in the DSA handbook. So let's say he was doing it for views. How does that change the strategy being a good strategy? How does it change that? And why we go back to forced to vote is because forced to vote crystallized that elected progressives are not able to see once in a lifetime moments where they can apply pressure. And they're sitting back going, hey, there's a comet coming. One of those that comes every, several years. There's a comet coming. Why don't we go ahead and get our camera here? It has to be another one. Really, when? So to me, that's the real bottom line of forced to vote, is that when are you going to have an opportunity like this again? That alone, to me, makes that the reason you should have executed forced to vote.
Is an incentive, I think, for everybody on this platform, for some maybe more than others, but we all respond to that on some level. Like nobody likes to be,
and that's also why she responded, by the way. Let's just be very clear.
Right.
Right. He wouldn't have responded if he had 1,000 YouTube followers.
Correct. And but I think what's becoming clear, and what is clear with Jimmy Dore in particular, is that this is not about pressuring politicians to do something. This is not about a long-term strategy to empower the most progressive forces in the Democratic Party to get real change. This is about him trying to prove, and it's an easy thing to do, at least in terms of what his requirements for proof are, him trying to prove that they're all frauds and that really the only true person out there is him.
Or the guy who took us.
I think he's meshing two things together, that the politicians are all frauds. So I don't know. Let's see. Maybe you wouldn't use those words, but what do you call a person who says, if you get me elected, I'm going to do A, B, and C. And then that person gets elected and says, I'm not doing A, B, and C. What do you call that person? So Jimmy chooses to call them frauds. And I think that's what he's referring to when he says, if they're all frauds. Now, and then he says, now he's reverting back to, in the commentary world, saying the second part of that comment, and he's the only voice. He is is there another voice at the time or in this TYT sphere of people? Is there any other voice other than Jimmy Dore who's saying don't support the Democratic Party? So I believe that's the point that he's making, is that because he says it all the time, I'm the only one telling you this because none of the other left media giants like TYT and Majority Report reports on certain things. So let's continue and listen.
Took Assad money.
Well,
Awesome. Like, sorry.
Let me rewind it. She threw in the Assad attack thing. So go ahead.
The most progressive forces in the Democratic Party to get real change. This is about him trying to prove, and it's an easy thing to do, at least in terms of what his requirements for proof are, him trying to prove that they're all frauds and that really the only true person out there is him.
Or the guy who took Assad money.
Well,
Awesome. Like, sorry. He accepted money.
It's Tulsi. It's Tulsi today, but it was Jill Stein before.
Right.
Like, he's not out there like trying to re-recruit Jill Stein. He's like, and I'll remind you, in 2016, it was Elizabeth Warren. I mean, go back and look at that interview, that I did with him. He was saying the plan was Donald Trump is going to get elected and then we're going to get Elizabeth Warren. And so it is.
So let's throw this one up here. Jimmy Dore pushed anti-vax propaganda. I'm not sure what that means. There's not a such thing as anti-vax to me. A person can say, I don't want to be vaccinated. So I don't get that critique. That's a real liberal person that would say that to me. Pretended, and this is another red flag that you're a liberal here. Pretended Ron DeSantis was pro free speech. These are two culture war things here that you mentioned in your first two sentences here. And acted dumb pretending like he couldn't tell Melania is a fascist. That's another one. So these are all things that's going on in liberal world. So again, is this in protection of the Democratic Party? Because each item you mention here, this is in defense of the Democratic Party. Anti-vax, the Biden administration is against that. So that's pro-Democrat. Pretend that even bringing up Ron DeSantis, in my opinion, is being pro-Democrat. I don't know other leftists outside of that even bring him up. Specifically on free speech is also telling. And then acted dumb pretending he couldn't tell Melania is a fascist. there's a lot of people. I call Melania a fascist, but there's a lot of people that wouldn't use that word. Nick, on this network, he did a stream. He wouldn't use that word, fascist. So what is this about? Again, I'm pointing out, I'm hearing defense of Democratic Party is what I'm hearing. So what is the critique that doesn't involve in defense of a Democratic stance, in defense of a Democratic pathway to lead non-establishment people back to the Democratic Party? So give me that critique. And not give me that critique, but tell me what that is, and maybe that's building or burning a bridge. So I'm trying to decipher whether or not this is a thing or this is just a personal issue. And this is a personal this is screaming to me this is a personal issue they have with Jimmy, not based on sketchy facts that they provide, like in this video that we're watching. But let me also read this I have in my notes. Let me see if this is the next thing. It's funny how it's so funny because his haters talk about him because they hate him and because they know it will get them a lot of views. It's sort of like a love-hate relationship. And maybe that's why the Majority Report does it a lot. A lot of these Jimmy Dore videos. Because if you hate him, the reason I'm saying this has to be a love-hate, because if you hate him, if he's this disgusting, he supports Assad, why wouldn't you just ignore him? Why wouldn't you just ignore him? Isn't the logical thing is if you hate somebody, you just put distance between you and that person? If you hate him, why don't you just stop talking about him? Because it goes beyond that to me. He's still talking about it's a signaling that we are attacking the guy that's telling people not to vote Democrats in any circumstance. And we are attacking that guy in defense of the Democratic Party. That's literally what this is. But let's continue with the video, and there's more.
Is whomever in that moment is not the person who's in a position to do something and to make any type of change, granted incremental, but yes, politicians.
So let's listen to this part he just said. So let's listen to this part. I'm going to rewind it maybe 25 seconds here. Let's listen to all of it.
I mean, I mean, go back and look at that interview, that interview that I did with him. He was saying the plan was Donald Trump is going to get elected and then we're going to get Elizabeth Warren. And so it is whomever in that moment is not the person who's in a position to do something and to make any type of change, granted incremental, but yes, politicians are not going to do revolutionary change in that.
Politicians are not going to do revolutionary change. What is needed in this moment? With inflation, with starving Afghanistan, with nuclear war, with income, with the highest disparity of income and equality, with homelessness. So
position to do something. And
that's what we're saying. These politicians, so it's like this. This is what it feels like. It's like a patient comes in with a gunshot wound, and you're saying to be fine with them putting a Band-Aid on a cut on their finger. There's more that's needed than just fixing a cut on the finger. There's more that's needed. There's a gunshot wound. There's all of this stuff happening. We can't just go by these sort of on the fringe help, on the fringe changes. More is needed. Let's continue.
And to make any type of change, granted incremental, but yes, politicians are not going to do revolutionary change in that regard. They can't. Like, our system is not such that they can.
And there's a resentment towards Ocasio-Cortez for engaging in politics that isn't strictly class reductionist politics, where she'll talk about issues of sexism and issues of racism that I don't think are the politics that Dore chooses to engage in. What he cares most about is AOC owning Pelosi, like owns, rips into, that kind of stuff, which isn't about building power.
Well, he was attacking her, like I say.
What do you need to build power if you have power? What building do you need to do? You have power right now that you don't use. So what is meant by building power in this context? But I'm going to pause it and read a couple of super chats here. Minky ran against AOC endorsed candidate. That's why she's on a hiatus, and I think she's in. Is she in Haiti or? I can't remember. She's somewhere, but she went right after the whole debacle with her candidacy. Thank you for the super chat. And I got another one here. Oh, same person. The damage Justice Dems did is immense. Professional managerial types think there is more money to be milked from the grifting tea. The working class is checked out. And that's essentially what I was just saying here. Thank you for the super chat again. Yeah, I'm not sure if that would happen, but where is that at? I thought I saw something else I wanted to throw up here. But anyway, let's continue. I saw the comment about glasses. I'm not going to put that up.
Before she came into office.
Yeah.
In 2018, in 2018, when just during the general election, she was asked a question by, I think it was Chris Cuomo or somebody on CNN, like, should Andrew Cuomo be the governor? And she was like, in the general election, yeah, people should go out and vote for Andrew Cuomo.
And she called AOC.
Well, this is the critique. So AOC called for voting for Cuomo, and Jimmy Dore critique. So this is their response video to that. So I'm going to rewind it just a little bit so we can get the context here.
Chris Cuomo or somebody on CNN.
Sorry, more.
Pelosi, like, owns, rips into, that kind of stuff, which isn't about building power.
Well, he was attacking her, like I say, before she came into office.
Yeah.
In 2018, in 2018, when just during the general election, she was asked a question by, I think it was Chris Cuomo or somebody on CNN, like, should Andrew Cuomo be the governor? And she was like, in the general election, yeah, people should go out and vote for Andrew Cuomo.
And she called AOC Mama Bear one time, so that must mean she's completely sold out.
And
let me ask the audience, if she called Nancy Bear Mama Bear, if she called Nancy Pelosi Mama Bear once, do you consider, is that the only thing you need to know about her selling out? Do you consider that selling out? Because Emma is saying that's ridiculous just because she called her that once. You know, when something is bad, the person has to emphasize it was only done once. Ask somebody who cheated in front of their mate, they cheated on. Oh, I just did it once, just one time. That feels very similar to this. It's an admission that it was a terrible thing. That's why you have to say it was only done once. Right? So that's what Emma's doing here.
And
right. That's what Emma's doing here. Is cheating on a person once, is that enough to say the person's a cheater? For some people it is. Some people allow redemption. For some people it is. But to pretend as if saying it once can't be a deal breaker for some people. Come on. I mean, I just can't imagine. I don't want to give that.
About building power.
Well, he was attacking her, like I say, before she came into office. Yeah. In 2018, in 2018, when just during the general election, she was asked a question by, I think it was Chris Cuomo or somebody on CNN, like, should Andrew Cuomo be the governor? And she was like, in the general election, yeah, people should go out and vote for Andrew Cuomo.
And she called AOC Mama Bear one time, so that must mean she's completely sold out.
And also we did a video on that because I've just seen this because people have like posted it now. And I will say that like at the time we're like, you know what, you want Cuomo in there instead of a Republican because we could get you could make it harder for him to veto things as opposed to a Republican would just come out and do it. We have no IDC now.
But they're all the same, man. Right. And that.
But they're all the same, man. Where's Cuomo now? The beauty in going back and viewing these tapes. But they're all the same, man. Yeah, they actually are. Just the same sexual harassment, the same bullying, the same corruption. But you're saying they weren't the same. That's why you're saying it sarcastically. But they're all the same, man. You're saying it sarcastically because you're trying to say they're not the same, and they are. And history has shown you wrong. So let's continue.
Veto things as opposed to a Republican would just come out and do it. We have no IDC now.
But they're all the same, man. Right. And that's the politics.
It's all worth it. All of that's worth it. He just killed a bunch of people in nursing homes. That's all. It's all worth it, right? The trade-off. You see the trade-off with the professional managerial class? Somebody's getting sold out. In this instance, grandma and great-grandma got sold out here. But they're all the same, man. Signs immunity for nursing home owners. Sexually harassing people behind the scenes.
That he wants to engage in. I know where to go from there.
Though. But go ahead, Naomi. With that,
it's interesting. I think this is about something actually bigger. So there's the Jimmy Dore issue, which is fueled by anything from having an agenda, clickbait, and really like making left commentary, frankly, cheap because it's not nuanced and it's not sophisticated and it's not like he has a background in political theory.
Here's the gatekeeping. You like it? You like how the professional managerial, this is literally the textbook definition of gatekeeping. She is saying, how is he able to even say anything? Because she's listing all these credentials he doesn't have. Now you know what the professional managerial class thinks of you if you don't have degrees. Those workers that tried to put together Force the Vote, does anybody have a college degree over there? Fuck that shit then. What degree do you have to be putting on Force the Vote, Jimmy? It's so absurd. But let's continue with Nomiki is, I mean, out of these three, she is the worst in her takes. Let's listen.
From having an agenda, clickbait, and really like making left commentary frankly cheap because it's not nuanced and it's not sophisticated and it's not like he has a background in political theory or organizing or frankly any politics. It is literally
he just doesn't read. He doesn't read anything except
Right.
he thinks, you know, honestly, I mean, that's what it comes down to.
It's emotion.
You don't need to have any of that background. You can just go and read. There's a lot of stuff you could.
It's just emotion. I want to pause here because let's go to some notes I have here. So then if Jimmy is this terrible person like they're describing, and not just them, but the James, the Annas, this terrible person, right? This is the question. Why do so many people like this guy? Fuck. Let's answer that question. Why people follow and love Jimmy Dore? This is just me. These are 3 points off the top of my head. There may be more in this discussion. Jimmy Dore uses the language and the tone that fits the moment of this collapsing empire. It's like if your boat is sinking and you're just going about your day. Hey guys, get in line. Come on, it's lunchtime. You have to do like you're just trying to keep you're trying to stay in these boundaries of electoralism to maneuver around to get the bare, the crumbs while the ship is sinking. So what Jimmy speaks to, his tone and the language, he's speaking to the moment. It fits the moment. We're at a nuclear war. It fits the moment. Pandemic, it fits the moment. So this is the uptick in Jimmy Dore. Now, whether his solutions are the solutions you would get, but the reason why people tune into him, because he doesn't just go, oh, yeah, Obama dropped bombs. Oh, this fucker dropped bombs on 90% civilians. Emotion. It's what's adequate for what is being said for the collapsing empire. So to me, that's a lot of reason why a lot of people like him, along with some of the things he says. So Jimmy Dore uses the language and tone of the working class, and that's another key part.